talk about the New York Giants. Right now, the New York Giants have only won 2 games on the season. And if they lose out for the rest of the regular season, they will end up with the first overall pick. I hope that's the case for the New York Giants. This season was a long time coming. When you look at the situation that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have been placed into, it's been one of the toughest situations in the NFL. And I want to start off with the general manager, Joe Schoen, and the head coach, Brian Daboll. It's a lot of reports that both of them could possibly be on the hot seat. And then when you read The Athletic, it's the fact that Joe Schoen's job is safe and Brian Daboll may be on the hot seat. I'm going to say this. Neither the head coach or the general manager deserve to be on the hot seat. I'm going to tell you why. Daniel Jones was already here when Joe Schoen became the general manager. Brian Daboll became the head coach. Daniel Jones was already here. The reason why they hired Brian Daboll was to go out there and get the most out of Daniel Jones, and he did his job. They made the NFL playoffs in the first year with Brian Daboll. No other coach in the NFL that has worked with Daniel Jones as a head coach could do that. And Brian Daboll did that. Not only did they make the NFL playoffs, they won a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. And you say that the Minnesota Vikings collapsed, they still won that game regardless. You can't help the circumstances that you go against. And it was a Giants team with subpar quarterback play. Daniel Jones only had 15 passing touchdowns. And his defense, still a bad offensive line. And your best wide receiver for majority of that season was Darius Slayton. For those last 4 to 5 weeks, it became Isaiah Hodgins. And Isaiah Hodgins is not a true number 1 or a true number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. And they made the NFL playoffs with that roster. And shout out to Saquon Barkley. That was one of the best seasons of his career leading up to this point. Right now, he's balling out with the Philadelphia Eagles. So when I look at it from that standpoint, Brian Daboll coached so well that it helped earn Daniel Jones a contract extension moving forward with the Giants. Joe Schoen was placed into a tough situation. They declined the 5th-year option. No one thought that Daniel Jones was going to go out there and help this team make the NFL playoffs. Their hands were tied. You were not going to go out there and possibly trade up and select a quarterback in the first round. That's why them losing right now is a great thing. Because you don't have to go out there and trade your future draft capital. You're just a terrible team record-wise. And you can select the quarterback that you want with the first overall pick. And I hope that that is the case with the Giants. Don't win another game for the rest of the season. Go with Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And I have a lot to say about those quarterbacks in the next couple of minutes. If they move off of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, I'm not going to be 100% shocked by it, but I would be disappointed. When I look at the Giants' coaching history, it hasn't been good. Coach Coughlin, phenomenal. Very good head coach. Won the Super Bowls with the Giants. You'll never hear me say a negative thing about him and his tenure with him and Eli Manning. Those were the glory days if you are a Giants fan. When they went out there, they defeated Tom Brady in those Super Bowls. Great, chef kiss. But you had Ben McAdoo as a head coach. Granted, made the NFL playoffs, still a terrible head coach. You hired Joe Judge to be a head coach and Jason Garrett to be your offensive coordinator. They placed Daniel Jones in terrible situations. Don't get me wrong. But Brian Daboll has been the only coach to go out there and get the best out of him. Daniel Jones was never going to be a franchise quarterback with the New York Giants. And Brian Daboll saw that, and the same with Joe Schoen. But they were placed into a bad situation. They didn't have anywhere else to go. And you're always going to pay the quarterback position over the running back position. I don't care if the running back has over 2,000 rushing yards on the season. You're going to pay the quarterback even if he is mediocre because it is so hard to find that position in the NFL. It's a lot of bad quarterback play in this league. So they went out there, hands are tied. They paid Daniel Jones. Was it a mistake to pay Daniel Jones? Yes. But at the time, the NFL, they had cooled off of running backs. Running backs were not getting paid that much, and they still aren't. So they franchise tagged Saquon Barkley. Then the year after, Daniel Jones tears his ACL and the writing was on the wall with Saquon Barkley. He was going to leave. Unfortunately, he went to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was Mara's worst nightmare, the owner. He said that in the HBO Hard Knock series, if he goes somewhere else or he goes to a division rival, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. And that's where he went. And Joe Schoen was so stressed out, he called Saquon Barkley and was like, hey, we're going to see if you go out there and test the market. If you want to come back, that would be great. In a one-on-one interview, he basically said it was so stressful, he felt like it took years off his life to go out there and make a decision between him and Daniel Jones. It was a possibility that you could have brought them both back, but to go out there and overpay for Daniel Jones and to pay Saquon Barkley top dollar, it was going to hurt your cap flexibility moving forward. So they were in a tough situation. They did make a major mistake. I'm not saying that they didn't, but their hands were tied. And it all culminates to this season. When I look at this situation with the Giants, Daniel Jones is no longer on this roster. That works out for him. And it also works out for the Giants. You get rid of him. Since 2019, you selected him in the first round. He wasn't a very good quarterback. You can now have a guy like Cam Ward or a guy like Shedeur Sanders. When you look at the Giants' skill positions, it's not bad. I really like Malik Neighbors. He has played alongside Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, and he's putting up very good numbers regardless. When I look at Malik Neighbors, 90 receptions for 901 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. And the amount of times that he has been missed on the field by Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and also Tommy DeVito, he could have easily had over 1,000 receiving yards at this point in time in the season. He is a true number one wide receiver, and he's a definition of a franchise wide receiver. They hit the home run on this kid. And I do feel for Daniel Jones, he never got a true number one wide receiver until Malik Neighbors showed up. Unfortunately, it would be Daniel Jones' last season with the Giants. And you had the previous regime, that previous general manager, Dave Gettleman, go out there and make terrible move after terrible move. You bring in Kenny Golladay. He wasn't a true number one wide receiver at the time. With the Lions, he had a lot of good seasons, but he just wanted to cash in on a good payday. He forgot how to catch. His route running ability was terrible. Brian Daboll came in, changed the culture. He sat him down. You knew when Brian Daboll would see Daniel Jones not play up to standard, eventually he was going to want to move on because that's the type of coach that he is. And Brian Daboll, you also brought him in because of the work that he did with Josh Allen. When I look at Cam Ward, he's similar, a very good athletic specimen. He will miss throws. He needs to work on his accuracy. But Brian Daboll did that with Josh Allen. And not to say that every quarterback in college that struggles with their accuracy, they're going to be able to fix it in the NFL. But you're going to have a great choice between Cam Ward, the big athletic specimen that can move around, make throws across his body from Florida, or you can go with the more refined passer, a guy that's ready to play right now, Shedeur Sanders. And you could talk about the Deion Sanders situation. He's not going to let his kid go to the Giants. I don't believe that. The Giants are not in a completely terrible situation talent-wise. You have Malik Neighbors, who I just named. Wan'Dale Robinson, very good football player. His rookie season, he missed majority of it, dealing with a torn ACL, but when he was on the field, very good player. I look at him now. He's a very good wide receiver. He's not a top 10, not a top 15 wide receiver, but that doesn't mean that he's not a good football player. He can get open down the field in the intermediate routes. He's just a very good quality wide receiver to have around. Yes, they selected him over George Pickens. It is what it is. He's not better than George Pickens, but he's a good football player. He has over 500 receiving yards right now. I look at Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton has been placed into that number one wide receiving role in the past. He's not a true number one. The most wide receiving yards that he has accumulated in the season has been 770, and that was in 2023 for 4 receiving touchdowns. Those are the most receiving yards that he's ever put up in the season. But when you have him as a true number 2 and he has to go against a lot of single coverage, he can go out there and give you good production. I look at Tracy Jr. at the running back position. He's so frustrating because he's a very good explosive player. He just turns the football over too much. And a lot of that is because he's not used to playing the running back position. For the ones that don't know, he's a former wide receiver in college. He transitioned over to being a running back because he wanted to make the Giants roster. And he's one of those players you look at, flexibility. You can use him on the outside. They did this against the Cincinnati Bengals. They put him inside the slot. They use him as an outside wide receiver. He's a gadget player. He's still learning how to play the running back position because he did not traditionally play this position in high school or college. He's still trying to get used to getting hit by defensive tackles and by defensive linemen in general. When you're a wide receiver, you're not getting hit by defensive linemen. You're getting hit by linebackers because you're coming across the middle of the field. You're getting hit by safeties because they're the last defensive players in terms of going back there and scoring a touchdown. He's not used to those contacts. He's not used to those hits just yet. And it's not to make excuses for him, but I do believe long term, he's going to be a very good running back. So for all the people that are saying, hey, if they had Saquon Barkley is an awesome player, but give Tracy Jr. his respect. He's been a solid running back this season. And you have Devin Singletary, who is a very good power back to have. So the Giants have talent. So for the excuses that people want to make, well, Shedeur Sanders won't work with the New York Giants, his dad won't allow it, they don't have talent, I can name worse rosters in the NFL. This is a Giants team. Let's just be real. They've been bad because of horrible offensive line play and bad coaching and bad quarterback play in the past. That's what has held them back. And Brian Daboll, I like the ideology that he has with the offense. Run the offense through your top wide receivers. Use a tight end here and there. I would love to see him use tight ends more. I like Theo Johnson a lot. Right now, he's on IR. He's been dealing with an injury, but that's a very good tight end that you could use, especially in the red zone situations. That's the one thing that I would say about Brian Daboll that really makes you scratch my head. You have Daniel Bellinger. You have Theo Johnson. I'm not calling these guys Rob Gronkowski or prime Travis Kelce, but they can be very good red zone targets. Just open up the offense. Use them. So the Giants, they have good skill position players. Running back, wide receiver, the offensive line. Andrew Thomas is one of the best tackles to have in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's missed majority of the season dealing with an injury. You have Jermaine, can play left tackle, can play right tackle. He's a very good versatile tackle to have around on your roster. John Michael Smith at the center position. He continues to get better. Solid last season, better this season. Those three players on the offensive line, very good. Evan Neal, he's a bust. Move on from Evan Neal. And it also brings in another discussion. Brian Daboll set down Kenny Golladay. He was making a lot of money. He saw that Evan Neal wasn't working out. He benched him in favor of Jermaine. So you know that you're getting a coach. He wants to get the best out of you. But if you can't go out there and produce on the field, he's going to sit you down. A no-nonsense coach. This is what the Giants need. And even if they move off of Brian Daboll, bring in someone else with the same mindset. If you're gonna go out there and show a lack of effort, and you're not going to try your best every single play, it's no point in having you on the field. Next man up mentality. And it helped them make the NFL playoffs that first year. I always remember that Tennessee Titans game. They went down there, they went for 2, and they won that matchup because of Brian Daboll. That's the mindset that he has. I'm a big Brian Daboll fan. I can see the Giants possibly moving on from him, but this is not his fault to why this season is this bad and why this season went to hell in the fastest way possible. It's because of terrible quarterback play with Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Daniel Jones. It doesn't help that your top tackle went down either and you have to depend on Evan Neal, who is just too slow to play in the NFL as a guard or even as a tackle. He's big, has a huge frame, athletic at times when he's in drills. On the field, doesn't work out. He's similar to Eric Flowers. That's who he reminds me of. Eric Flowers was a terrible player with the Giants. Horrible. As a matter of fact, both of those guys went to the same college, and neither one of them was able to work out in the NFL. Hopefully the Giants learn to stop going out there and just selecting big offensive tackles. They are just so massive, but they can't move around on the field. That's what is really hurting Evan Neal. It's the fact that he's too slow to work out at the tackle position, and he's not athletic enough to work out at the guard position. You have to be more than just big to work out at these positions. We've seen undersized offensive linemen flourish in the NFL because the technique is there and they're able to move around. Evan Neal is just a big guy that can't move. So when he goes against a speed rusher like Micah Parsons, he did him so dirty, he turned him into a pass rusher. He was basically facing Drew Lock and won the snaps. That's not a good thing to see, especially for a first-round talent and a guy that you selected in the first round. Move off of Evan Neal. You have Jermaine, you have Andrew Thomas. Go out there and continue to build this offensive line. And the Giants have dealt with offensive line problems for many years now. Pretty much up to a decade at this point. When I look at the defense for the Giants, they have taken a step back. Wink Martindale was a very good defensive coordinator, but him and Brian Daboll, they didn't see eye to eye. It was a lot of reports that came out that, hey, Brian Daboll was having a lot of disagreements with Wink Martindale, and Wink Martindale has a hot temper, just like Brian Daboll. It wasn't going to work out. They let Wink Martindale go. He's now the defensive coordinator for Michigan. You look at the defensive coordinator right now with the Giants, everyone is taking a step back. I want to start off with Kayvon Thibodeau. Only 3 sacks this season. He did miss time dealing with a wrist injury, but that's not an excuse for him showing a lack of effort on the field. When I look at Kayvon Thibodeau, very good football player, don't get me wrong, but he's a bit of a catfish. He only had 4 sacks his rookie season. In 2022, this is his rookie year, 40 pressures on 409 snaps. It's not bad. You're still trying to figure yourself out in the NFL. You're a rookie. I'll give you some grace. You had the 4 sacks. Go out there and be better. Sophomore season, he did have 11.5 sacks. Those are very good numbers. Double-digit sacks, hey, that's a plus. You only had 43 pressures on 520 snaps, and you had 40 pressures on 409 snaps the year before. The pressure rate has to be higher. especially for a player that dominated at Oregon. He reminds me so much of Chase Young, and it scares me. He's dealt with injuries. When he's red hot on the field, he's red hot. I've seen him get sacks back to back on first and second down. When he's rolling and when that motor is hot, he's going. But when he's cold and nothing's going his way, he's not doing anything on the field. He needs to be more consistent with his play. This is a guy that's entering year 4 after this season. Need to see more consistency out of Kayvon Thibodeau. Not a bad player. I like him a lot. Was very special at Oregon. I just want to see him go out there, come off the edge, and just be a sack monster. He should be in the same conversation with guys like TJ Watt, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons. He has the skill set. He has the speed coming off the edge. And he's playing alongside Dexter Lawrence, who was a top sack leader in this league before he got injured. And that's one more thing I want to talk about. The Giants have dealt with so many injuries from Andrew Thomas this year. Malik Neighbors missed time with a concussion. You look at Dexter Lawrence. He's missed majority of this season dealing with an injury, and he's a phenomenal defensive player to have. You can build this defense around Dexter Lawrence. He is that dominant. Usually defensive tackles, they don't go out there and lead the league in sacks. He was on pace to do that. You're facing a lot of double and triple teams. Teams are going out there, they were double teaming him. So it's no excuse to why Kayvon Thibodeau cannot come off the edge in a better rate. Last season, he did with the 11.5 sacks. A lot of it is just cleanup sacks. He needs to be able to go out there and beat up tackles on his own. When I look at Brian Burns, that was a very good trade. You trade a 2nd and 5th round pick to bring him over from the Carolina Panthers. Very good football player. 8 sacks this season up to this point. He's not going to go out there and have the same numbers as TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. That's okay. Not every defensive lineman has to go out there and do that. As long as he's able to go out there and stop the run and put pressure on the quarterback, that is where you can build your defense through the trenches, and it can help out your secondary. And speaking of the secondary, I'm more upset about the fact that the Giants did not bring back Xavier McKinney. You can find a running back, and even though Saquon Barkley, he's generational, he's phenomenal. Xavier McKinney leads the league in interceptions, tied with Kirby Joseph. They both have 7 interceptions. The Giants only have 2 interceptions as a team. The man has more interceptions than the entire Giants defense. The Giants have allowed 19 passing touchdowns this year to just 2 interceptions. That's not good. They need more playmakers on the back end. Now look at Deonte Banks. You're very good your rookie season. Credit a lot of that to Wink Martindale. This season, you got benched in the Steelers game because you got hurdled by Najee Harris. Another player that Brian Daboll has benched because of lack of effort and lack of trying. And yes, he gives up on plays on the back end. I have seen it. I've seen it in the Dallas Cowboys game and against the Philadelphia Eagles. He has to be a better player moving forward. I'm not saying give up on him. He's a terrible player. There's something there with Deonte Banks. I think eventually, if he can figure things out, right now he's going through a sophomore slump. He can figure things out. He could possibly be the best player in that secondary with the Giants. And I'm being legit here. That's the type of skill set that he has. He was very good in the back half of his rookie season last year. He just has to be more consistent and just play with more confidence. I like the Giants players. The team as a whole, they have a long ways to go. But when you look at what other teams have done, the Houston Texans, they bring in CJ, they bring in D'Amico Ryans, but you bring in CJ, playoff contender, make the NFL playoffs this rookie season. Jaden Daniels in this division, look at what Jaden Daniels has done for the Washington Commanders. And I look at this with the Giants. You have the players. You have Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Malik Neighbors. You may laugh at me about Wan'Dale Robinson, and you may laugh at me with Darius Slayton. Those guys can get open. They can ball. They were getting open against the Dallas Cowboys, especially in the Thursday night football game. Daniel Jones just cannot push the football there. The Giants have had some good moments this year on the offensive end. They have good offensive players. Don't sleep if they select Shedeur Sanders with the first overall pick. In my opinion, I would go with Shedeur Sanders. He's more pro-ready right now. You do worry about the Deion Sanders situation, and it would be pretty ironic because Eli Manning, he did not want to play for the Chargers. For the ones that don't know, Eli Manning told the Chargers basically, I'm not playing for you. Trade me to the Giants or else. And they traded him to the Giants. So it would be pretty ironic if Shedeur Sanders and Deion's like, hey, we're not going to the Giants. And they had to settle for Cam Ward. And Cam Ward, by the way, is not a bad player. For me to say they have to settle for Cam Ward makes it sound like he's just terrible. He's not. He just has more growing to do. And these are easily the 2 best quarterbacks in this draft class. I don't see the Giants going with Carson Beck. I don't see them going with Quinn Ewers. That's unrealistic and that's terrible. If they do that, fire everyone and Mara should go out there and sell the team. you go with either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And I think the Giants will be better off for it. But this season right here is going to go down as one of the worst seasons in Giants history. But it can also be a pivotal season in Giants history that help you build a contender in the future. And all I want to see is just good football from every single team in the NFL. I want to see the Giants be good again. That's all I want to see. And to go back a couple of years ago, when they made the NFL playoffs with Daniel Jones and that first year with Brian Daboll, it was one of the most fun seasons to watch if you're a Giants fan. But it was also one of the worst things that could have happened to the Giants long term because you missed out on numerous possible quarterbacks that you could have selected in the first round. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Giants? Did I miss anything about Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll? And do you guys believe that they should go out there and clean house? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, when each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. And before I say peace, who should they select with the first overall pick? Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders?